Amaris Williams is ready to take that next step, and it will be huge for the Auburn Tigers.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Mike G of the War Rapport hanging out with us for today's show. We're talking about players that we're expecting to take a big jump from last year to this upcoming season. And I want to start with Amaris Williams, a guy who talked to the media over the offseason and said, I didn't do what I needed to do to be ready a year ago. And then we've seen him put in that work, have an incredible spring, and I think he offers some positional versatility to be a backup to Keldrick Falk, to also play some strong side defensive end. There's chatter about Auburn playing 4 down defensive linemen, so could they scoot him inside? With as much as Auburn lost on the defensive line this offseason, whether it's portal, whether it's graduation, NFL draft, whatever, Mike G, the opportunity will be plentiful for Amaris Williams.
It will be. And I think when you talk about the defense or the team as a whole, people have the most questions about defensive line, especially interior defensive line. But, Amaris Williams, let's not forget, was a guy that briefly flirted with the poor December. 2 days later, he decided, you know what, I'm going to come back. But he got some feedback there that resonated with him on, what he could do. And now he owned it. He said, look, I didn't do what I needed to do to be ready a year ago. And I think that is a sign of a healthy program where we see players actually taking accountability for their lack of opportunity and playing time. Auburn was very good defensively last year. Amaris Williams had all the hype, and deservedly so, coming in. But now is the time where you see him, I think, make the big jump from year 1 to year 2. They say that's the most impactful jump any player makes, Zach, is from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, and Amaris physically is everything that you could ask for as an edge defender. Now, I am curious, when you look at the depth of the defensive line, I love the edges. I have questions about the interior. I love, Bobby Jamison Travis. I love Malik Blockton. I'm curious to see which of the freshmen step up. But does positional versatility of what Amaris can offer, does he do that? Does he play more of a backup edge, backup end role? I think the snaps are going to be there for him to get on the field regardless. And just for the sake of conversation here, Keldrick Falk played 591 snaps last year, which I expect that number to be about the same. But Jalen McLeod at edge played 598. So you assume Keyron Crawford is going to get a lot of those. Keyron played over 300 snaps last year. Do some of those backup snaps that Keyron had last year, does it go to Amaris, or is Amaris strictly Keldrick's backup? Is it more fluid than maybe I'm giving it credit for? I don't know. I like all of the options. I just can't wait to see how they're going to use it, because I do think Amaris' skill set is going to be good regardless of where you put him on the defensive front.
I ran into DJ Durkin recently, and we actually talked about this briefly, about the versatility of a guy like Amaris Williams.
Yes.
They feel like he opens things up for them defensively, adds a particular kind of depth that's very difficult to find on defensive line, and they're looking to use him in multiple ways. Most importantly, Amaris was open to that idea being used somewhat unconventionally and being flexible and moving around where they need him on defensive line. So they've been preparing for that. Amaris, after the spring, essentially said that he wasn't doing a lot of things off the field that translated to him lacking opportunity on the field. Now, presumably, he's doing those things. So he's locked in on being able to be that versatile piece that DJ Durkin feels like he needs him to be in 2025.
Yeah. Amaris played 119 snaps last year, according to Pro Football Focus, 60 pass rushing snaps. And on those 60 snaps, he generated 5 pressures, which small sample size, but you take that. And if you multiply that times 2, 3, 4, which is what we're all kind of hoping for Amaris in pass rushing situations, pass rushing downs, that's a pretty solid season. So we'll see what that looks like with a larger role and him taking that step forward. But I think he gets there. I think Amaris could be an exceptional second-year player in this system. Another guy that I expect to take a big step forward from last season to this season is Cam Coleman. And some people say, well, Cam Coleman's already great. He's already great. And I think so. I think he is already great. But I think Cam Coleman could take that step from going to great to elite. Daryl and I had a conversation. I don't know if it was early this week or late last week, but all these top 10 lists are coming out, Mike, of the top 10 receivers. PFF put one out. ESPN put one out. I think On3 put one out. And all of them have Eric Singleton on there, which I think he's worthy of it.
Sure.
And none of them have Cam Coleman on there. And I think Cam Coleman will be a top 10 wide receiver in college football this year. I don't think that's a crazy thing to think or to say or to project or assume at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's and it's funny. We had this conversation earlier this week over at the War Rapport about Cam Coleman and where he ranks in the conference. Look, we all know Auburn was after a lot of big name receivers. Cam Coleman, they got Ryan Williams was another name that was on the board for Auburn. He ended up at Alabama. But a lot of people looked at what Ryan Williams did and they said, hey, like, this guy's better than Cam Coleman. And I say, hey, hold on just a second now. We're talking about a guy in Cam Coleman as a true freshman that still averaged 16 yards per catch last season. The issue were lack of opportunities. Now, if you go back and you look at him versus Ryan Williams, Ryan got 11 more receptions than Cam Coleman, but he got a ton more targets. Yeah. And so I'm thinking, so he only finished 11 receptions behind Ryan Williams. He finished about 200 yards. And if you take that average aggregate of 16 yards per catch and you give him those extra 11 catches, he catches up to him easily. So, yes,
I also think just overall, like, I think they're different too. I mean, I think they're different type receivers as well. I also think Alabama's quarterback play was better than Auburn's last year too.
Something we talked about as well. Yeah.
One got drafted, one did not. Right. And so I think that's certainly part of it as well. So I don't really, they're all good, right? Like Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams, they're good. They're very, very good. I mean, right now, I do think I would give the nod to Ryan Williams, but I do think it's way closer. The conversation is way closer than like what the national media is putting on all these lists.
Let me recharacterize this for you. It's much easier to believe in what you've already seen. And like I said, since he's already getting the targets and he's, he had better quarterback play, it's easy to say, yeah, I think Ryan Williams is ahead right now. But statistically, the jump that you're talking about that you expect to see, Cam Coleman is not going to be a 600-yard receiver next year. As a matter of fact, as far as I know, with what these guys are developing this offseason, we have this conversation year in and year out. He should be Auburn's first 1,000-yard receiver since Ronnie Daniels in '99. Now, we've had a couple guys come close.
Sure.
Darvin Adams, Sammy Coates, had a good season. Seth Williams touched the 800-yard
Keandre last year. Sure.
Yeah, Keandre last year. This year, Cam Coleman, if he gets what normal lead receivers in this league get, which we have no reason to believe that won't happen under Hugh Freeze if he opens it up. Now, I sat down with Coach Freeze earlier this week. He said, because of the talent shift at tight end to wide receiver, we should expect to see more 10 and 11 personnel, which is going to mean a ton more opportunities for these receivers. And if you get Cam Coleman in the 70 to 85 reception range, he's going to blow those yardage marks out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, if you got into that range, I mean, we're talking about the chance to have the best receiver year for an Auburn player ever, if he gets that many receptions. And I also think, and this was my biggest frustration, or one of my biggest frustrations towards the end of last year, like, just to continue the comparison with Alabama, Ryan Williams, and Auburn and Cam Coleman last year. I mean, you could tell Alabama was running stuff for Ryan Williams. And then, like, Hugh Freeze is asked on games where, like, Cam Coleman got 8 targets and 8 catches or whatever. Like, what's up with that? And it's like, well, it's just what the defense gave us. It's like, no, run stuff for him. Like, I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. So, I don't know. I kind of forgotten about that until you said it. It kind of triggered that. But I think Cam Coleman goes from great to elite this year, and I think Amaris Williams goes from good to great this season. And there's more. Yes, go ahead.
Let me add this, because it just to piggyback the point you're making about just run stuff for him, especially when coming into the job, you made such a big deal about getting pass catchers with catch radius, guys who could go up and just, pardon my French, just go catch the damn football. And so you got that guy, and to not throw it to him is borderline criminal. I mean, he is a generational talent. At some point, it doesn't matter what they're running. You throw it up to Cam Coleman, and you trust your guy to make a play. Now, again, when you need a quarterback who can put it in the general universe of the receiver, certainly. So I'm not saying just, throw stupid passes up to Cam Coleman. But I am saying I think there were more opportunities there for him to just let him go get 50-50 balls in scenarios where he could save you. And Auburn just didn't do that. Hugh Freeze thinks they're going to do that this year. So that's why I think he makes the statistical jump that you're expecting.
Yeah. And I mean, even larger than the stats, I mean, just overall impact on the game, too. Opening up things for Malcolm Simmons and Horatio Fields and, whoever does step up at tight end. I think you're going to see and feel a lot of it, both on the stat sheet and off of it as well. There are more guys that are going to step up from last year to this year, and one is Jay Crawford. I can't go a full show without mentioning a corner. That's next right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Upwork. We love partnering with Upwork because they love helping your business succeed. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help your business take it to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, marketing. You can find the right talent. You can do it fast. It's easy to use, and it's cost effective. So head over to Upwork.com right now to post your job for free. That is Upwork, UPWORK.com, Upwork.com to connect with talent and grow your business today. Mike G of the War Rapport hanging out with us on today's edition of Locked on Auburn. Jay Crawford, I think, was exceptional last year as the freshman that he was, and I don't know if he's really discussed as much as he should be. I think he was great. And so now the tandem of him and Kayin Lee and just how deep this room is with Champ Anthony. I mean, Jay was consistently good last year as a true freshman, and I expect him to be consistently great this year. I've heard nothing but great things about the defensive back room, and I think it's flying under the radar from a conference coverage point of view. Not on this show, we talk about it all the time, but from a conference point of view and from a national point of view, I think Jay Crawford is going to lead a very impressive group of defensive backs this season. I'm expecting a jump from last year to this year for him too.
Yeah, the lack of coverage that you're talking about is about losing. Auburn had a very good defense last year that was just overshadowed by the fact that they weren't winning games. And we both sit here and agree most of that was problems offensively. Jay Crawford was Auburn's highest graded corner per PFF last season. Now you had and I'm specifying corner, not defensive back, because you had a couple safeties that are graded higher on the season. But look, at the end of the day, what they're building on defense has really, really been foundationally centered around defensive back. Auburn being able to leave guys in one-on-one situations and man lockdown situations is going to help that defensive line quite a bit. Now, we talked about Amaris Williams and what they need to do there. Normally, the dynamic we like to see is a dynamic pass rush helping the DBs out. It's been kind of the other way around at Auburn, but it's between them and the wide receivers, for which is the strongest position group on the team. I'm giving the slight edge to the defensive backs because their destiny is more in their hands than the wide receivers are. And Jay Crawford is a huge part of that. This is another guy that I think, because he's getting overlooked because of the association with losing last season. But if Auburn hits the over, which is 7.5 this year, I think you're going to see Jay Crawford on all SEC lists. I think he's a second team all SEC guy floor. And, depending on the type of season they have, maybe he plays his way to the first team all SEC.
Yeah, I think he's certainly good enough for it. I agree with you. And I'm excited to see the dynamic of the cornerback room. I mean, Champ Anthony's health is a wild card in this because, I mean, based on what we saw in I guess the 4 games that Champ Anthony played last year, I mean, his coverage, smaller sample size, and I think they asked Kayin Lee to do a lot last year, but in the amount of snaps that we saw, Champ Anthony was arguably better in coverage than Kayin Lee was. And like, what a crazy discussion we're going to have here as far as like two of those three guys are going to be on the field. Hopefully in some situations, all three of them are. It's just so deep. And then like, I like Strader, the kid from, Miami of Ohio that they brought over, what led the Ohio Valley Conference in batted passes. The analytics love Strader as well. So it's a great room. It's an incredibly deep room. And I think Jay Crawford's ability to be elite on the outside is going to make everybody in that room better.
Yeah, I agree. He's again another very versatile guy, a great recruiting find, I think, for DJ Durkin and his defense. And there's not a lot of questions about what they're doing defensively here. The scheme is good. I think it worked. I think for the most part, what Auburn did, especially in pass coverage, worked for the most part. So this is the year where we see significant jumps. Now, look. Auburn went out in the offseason and they made DJ Durkin the second highest paid assistant in the country for a reason. And it's because of guys like Jay Crawford who are clearly developing. And, like I said, this season, if he's not second team all SEC, I would almost bet the whole 401k on it that this guy, barring injury, is going to be one of the best in the conference.
Yeah, or somebody else steps up, I guess. Like he loses out to Champ and Kayin. I'm not predicting that to happen, but I'm with you. I think he'll be on several all-conference lists when the season is over. Then let's mention the other Crawford, Keyron Crawford. We talked about snaps a second ago. I mean, Jalen McLeod, I think, led players on the front four in snaps for Auburn last year. Played 598. Yes, he did. As far as front seven guys, Jaron Thompson 718, Kayin Lee 643, Dorian Mayusi 619, Caleb Harris 608. Yeah, so then it was Jalen McLeod at 598. Those snaps go away. Keyron Crawford's over 300 snaps will probably go close to what J-Mac did a year ago. The opportunity that he will have in front of him is tremendous. I love how he really turned it on at the tail end of last season, and I think. From a pass rushing standpoint, especially with all the attention, I think Keldrick is going to get more attention offensively than Keyron will. I think he's going to have plenty of one-on-one situations, which is unique from an edge rusher of his caliber. He should be in a great spot statistically to take a huge step forward from last year to this year.
I think we tested as well, too. Now, from a coverage grade standpoint, he was one of the extremely talented, but one of the lower graded guys there in that room.
I hate it when we drop our edge guys in the flat and in coverage. I hate it. Just send them. Just send them.
Yeah, just send them. Look, I think that in talking about guys who have an opportunity to make a big jump this season, there's a lot of opportunity there when we look statistically for him to move. But the thing, and the reason why we're predicting this is the talent is not the issue. I think he's extremely talented. It's the stuff between the ears. Freeze talked earlier this week a lot about guys digesting and being able to process what they want them to do. And that's where he feels like his team has made a big jump. He also pointed to Auburn defensively increasing their team speed, Zach. And they talked about Keyron in that regard. He said, look, we feel like our team speed is up. All these guys have gotten faster, bigger, and stronger. And they think that's going to pay dividends here defensively for them this coming season.
Yeah. And there's still more guys. And in fact, before we clicked record, Mike, you mentioned a guy that Hugh Freeze mentioned by name to you. Let's touch on who that is in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. And right now you can win your first $5 bet at FanDuel. And you get $200 in bonus bets. Obviously, the NBA playoffs are happening right now, so it's a perfect time to get in on the action there. Or you can look at some of the futures. I think Auburn's plus 3,000 to win the SEC next year, I believe is what the number I saw earlier today. So if you're feeling risky, if you feel like this Auburn team can put it all together to win the conference, head over to FanDuel and put your money where your mouth is. If you're new to FanDuel, like I said, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Mike G of the War Rapport hanging out with us. You mentioned a key defender that Hugh Freeze talked about a ton with you earlier this week.
Yes, DeMarcus Riddick. As a matter of fact, I made a comparison that surprisingly he smiled and jumped on the bandwagon. DeMarcus Riddick, I described as my Malcolm Simmons of the defense.
Okay.
Guy who's extremely talented. They clearly wanted to get him on the field and get him time, but he just had to learn how to harness all that athleticism. As a matter of fact, when I said it, he pointed to God, which game was it? I think it was maybe the Vanderbilt game where he had a guy dead to rights. He said he had dead to rights and just overran the play. So it's interesting listening to him talk about his team and how, look, I know he's an offensive guy, but he is really in tune and in with these young guys that they've recruited here defensively. And they think DeMarcus Riddick has a chance to be one of the better players in the conference. Now, we know he had offseason surgery, and so it's been kind of like a recovery type of spring for him. But the amount that that young man played last year, I thought, going into last season, I said DeMarcus Riddick is not getting talked about enough. He's just not.
The chatter around his recruitment dropped off because, like, in his high school, they moved him to safety, and then all these Georgia folks are like, "Yeah, he's not that good. Like, he didn't have an impressive statistical senior year," was the narrative. And then he comes in, and like he was one of the guys that practiced in like the bowl season prep and was like winning people over like crazy. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So when your head coach sits down for a one-on-one interview and then singles a guy like that out, that says a lot to me. And Freeze knows who his guys are, right? Like he knows. He knows. He came into the job and told us Jarquez Hunter is the best back I've ever coached, and he had not coached him a single practice when he made that statement.
Sure.
So when he feels this way about certain players, I think that fans should take notice. And DeMarcus Riddick is definitely one of those guys. I just there's so much potential on this team. We got into Zach. What are the expectations? What should the expectations be for this season? Now you're in year 3. Year 2 saw you 2 straight losing seasons, and you missed the bowl game. And there were a lot of people, I asked them straight up, that said a lot of people felt like that missing a bowl game last year wasn't about a talent gap. He said, we're not running from that. We got to coach it better. We understand that we got to do a better job as a coaching staff. And so the immediate beneficiaries of that are going to be guys like DeMarcus Riddick, like Cam Coleman, like Amaris Williams, Keyron Crawford, these guys that we're talking about. But defensively, I'm telling you, man, he's another guy that I wouldn't be surprised to see sneak onto all SEC lists or watch lists by midseason.
Yeah, the way they use Riddick, I can't wait to see it because I do think it'll be different than last year. I mean, he played so much on the line of scrimmage last year as kind of that edge. I guess people chart it in different ways, whether you want to call it like an outside linebacker or an edge guy, whatever, but didn't play in the box a ton. I think he played in the box in like a quarter of his snaps ish. And I think that's where more of the stuff is going to be for him. And I mean, they played him off too in coverage to some extent, but not a whole lot as like your traditional linebacker. So I'm curious if it's just going to be more of putting him everywhere, or if he is going to be kind of your traditional linebacker that you also put in the box a good bit. I mean, he's so good. You can do whatever you want with him. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Like lots of intrigue on this for this upcoming squad here. I have been trying to contain my bug, Zach.
You don't have to contain it,
but now
let the bug out.
It's hard when you sit down with the head coach and you sit down with the players and you start talking about the things that they're going to do differently. That's what's got me excited. Here are the things that we feel like, look, you're going to see more of this. And part of that is the talent being closer to what they envision for their system. Now, like when you think, I don't mean to segue too far, but last offseason, they wanted everybody said, oh, why aren't we dropping the bag on Cam Ward? Well, there was a belief internally that Auburn was more than a quarterback away. So, Cam Ward was reportedly looking for in the area of $2 million or more. And look, he was
which in today's market is the deal of the century, right?
We're only a year removed from that, and now that number seems low. But he was the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. I think his value was clear that he was worth whatever any for him. But Auburn says, do we want to go out and spend this $2 million if it's not going to put us in playoff, if we feel like we're further away? And so now the roster is in a place where going into next season, if they feel like one player might boost them and all we got to do is spend $2-3 million to get that transformational guy that puts us in playoff contention, they're going to go spend that money because the rest of the roster has come together. Again, Keyron Crawford, Jay Crawford, Cam Coleman, Amaris Williams, DeMarcus Riddick, all these, Malcolm Simmons, all these guys taking these next steps. Now you add.
Yeah, and we could do more, right? Sylvester Smith, Caleb Harris, Perry Thompson, Malcolm Simmons.
They're loaded.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so many guys that played key roles that are young. And it's like, who can take that next step? And I mean, these are all like second-year guys, except for Keyron. But I mean, you could put Connor Liu in that conversation. I think you could put Dylan Wade in that conversation. Like, if we can get him to play more of his true position. I mean, Bobby Jamison Travis apparently took a major step forward this spring. Like, it's I'm with you. Like, it's really hard to not like read too much into all of this stuff. I mean, because I really like this roster.
Yeah, there's not much of a talent gap between Auburn and everybody else not named Georgia and Alabama right now. And I'll tell you that gap closed a lot more. Yeah, right. That gap closed a lot more between Auburn and Alabama. So sorry, I didn't mean not mean to omit Texas, but you're right.
You're good. We don't play Texas, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah,
at the top of the conference, though, what you see that Auburn, and let's talk about a couple teams that were expected to make the playoff last year and didn't, in Ole Miss and Missouri. You're not telling me either of those teams is more talented than Auburn sits today. And in May 7th at 2:47 Eastern time, Auburn is just as, if not more talented than Ole Miss and Missouri, and that should be good enough to make a playoff if the coaches can get the scheme right and the ball bounces their way.
Yeah. I mean, they are in a situation where I think the roster is good enough where if it all works out and everybody, and you get lucky with a few things, and luck can mean injuries, it can mean a 50-50 ball go your way or against you, depending on the situation. The way of a fumble bounces. I mean, I do think the roster is good enough if this is coached well enough where you can have those conversations once November rolls around, which is all you can ask for at this point.
Absolutely.
At this point of the rebuild for Auburn football, that's all you can ask for. So
yeah. I will say, I think, man, if we're talking about stages of the rebuild, man, they're going through the punch list. The construction punch list right now to make sure that things are good, but they've got the guys that they want. And that's what makes me excited, right? His supreme confidence in that Jackson Arnold is the guy. I thought probably the most important thing that came out of the interview we did was Jackson Arnold is our starter, period. It's May. They've known that. We brought him here to be that guy. He's the guy. Deuce and Ashton understand their roles, and, we're going to move forward.
Yeah, the lack of uncertainty is what we did the show on yesterday. Like the lack of uncertainty should be a strength for this team because we haven't really had that for the last few years. So I think that's great. If we left anybody out, who's going to take a big step from last year to this year that we left out, let us know in the comments down below, or of course on social media. Mike G, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
You guys know the deal. Go on over to YouTube, subscribe at the War Rapport. As I mentioned, we did drop a one-on-one interview with Coach Hugh Freeze. It was an hour long, Zach. I got an hour with the head ball coach this spring. I appreciate his willingness to be candid and give us some real answers. And I think.
Oh no. The interview is fantastic. I've watched like the first 20 minutes of it. I plan on watching more tonight. But be sure to check out Mike G and the guys over at the War Rapport on YouTube and on social media. You're back. I think I got the plug correct. Please like this video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.